Guerrilla warfare, which describes unconventional strategies employed by smaller organizations against bigger, more conventional forces, has played a significant role in shaping a variety of battles throughout the course of history. This video provides a comprehensive analysis of its development, prominent strategies, and influence. The beginnings and the first examples, periods of the ancient and classic world. The ideas of guerrilla warfare may be traced back to Sun Tzu's The Art of War, 5th century BCE, which was written in ancient China. Sun Tzu's book emphasized methods like ambushes, deception, and the element of surprise. Concepts that are fundamental to guerrilla tactics include adaptability and making the most of the terrain to one's advantage. Sun Tzu advocated for these ideas. Conflicts affecting the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire constantly came up against guerrilla opposition. Just one example: the Jewish Zealots, 66 to 73 CE. The Zealots employed many strategies against Roman forces, including ambushes and hit-and-run tactics. They took advantage of their familiarity with the terrain in the area and maintained a high level of mobility. Vercingetorix, 52 BCE. The Gaul leader. Vercingetorix adopted guerrilla tactics during his insurrection against Julius Caesar, utilizing his acquaintance with the surrounding topography to launch surprise attacks and avoid direct combat. When the Middle Ages. In the course of the Spanish Reconquista, which took place between the years 711 and 1492, Christian soldiers deployed guerrilla tactics against the Christian Moors. Particularly noteworthy is the fact that Christian forces employed hit-and-run attacks and ambushes in order to disrupt Moorish control. Figures like El Cid became legendary for their employment of unconventional strategies such as these. The age of modernity. During the 17th and 18th periods. Colonial tactics. During the American Revolutionary War, 1775 to 1783, American forces, particularly those located in the southern colonies, employed guerrilla tactics against British troops. Some of the leaders who organized militia forces included Francis Marion and Daniel Morgan. These militia units engaged in hit-and-run operations and disrupted supply lines for the British government. Tactical innovation. The American colonies were able to counterbalance the numerical and tactical advantage of the British regulars by the utilization of irregular warfare, which ultimately contributed to the eventual success of the American forces. Ambushes, sabotage, and raids were some of the tactics that Spanish and Portuguese guerrilla fighters, sometimes known as guerrilleros, used to harass French forces during the Peninsular War, which took place during the Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815. It was largely due to their efforts that Napoleon's power over the Iberian Peninsula was significantly diminished. The 19th century. Americans who fought in the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, Confederate partisans. There were guerrilla operations carried out by groups such as William Quantrill's Raiders and John Singleton Mosby's Rangers. These operations targeted supply routes and infrastructure belonging to the Union. The Union forces experienced considerable disruptions as a result of their efforts. Conflict between the United States and the Philippines, 1899 to 1902, Filipino insurgents. In the aftermath of the Spanish-American War, Filipino fighters employed guerrilla tactics against American troops. Ambushes and raids were incorporated into the strategy of leaders like Emilio Aguinaldo, which resulted in the fight being drawn out for a longer period of time and made it more difficult for American forces to gain control. This century and the years that follow. During World Wars I and II. In the First World War, 1914 to 1918, limited guerrilla warfare was conducted. The use of guerrilla tactics was restricted during World War I due to the trench warfare that was prevalent during that conflict. Nevertheless, during the Anglo-Irish War, 1919 to 1921, organizations such as the Irish Republican Army, IRA, employed guerrilla tactics in order to challenge the authority of the British government. European resistance during World War II, 1939 to 1945, resistance parties in occupied Europe employed guerrilla tactics in order to fight against Nazi forces. Direct attacks, sabotage, and espionage were all carried out by the Soviet partisans, the Polish Home Army, and the French resistance. The Pacific Theater. Guerrilla warfare was utilized extensively against Japanese soldiers in Asia during the armed conflict. Ambushes and hit-and-run strategies were among the most effective strategies utilized by the Chinese Communist forces and the Filipino rebels. The era of the Cold War. From 1955 until 1975, the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army fought in the Vietnam War. Ambushes, tunnel warfare, and the creation of booby traps were some of the guerrilla techniques that the Viet Cong utilized in their conflict with the United States of America and South Vietnamese forces. It was essential to their approach that they were able to effectively blend in with the local community and make use of the difficult terrain. Effects on the doctrine of the military. The success of guerrilla tactics in Vietnam had an impact on the doctrine of the United States military, which resulted in a greater emphasis on counterinsurgency operations. Che Guevara and Fidel Castro were the leaders of the Cuban Revolution, which took place between 1953 and 1959. Castro and Guevara employed guerrilla tactics in order to topple the Batista regime. Their strategy consisted of a combination of political mobilization and rural guerrilla warfare, which ultimately resulted in their victory and the installation of a communist government in Cuba. Between the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Afghanistan Mujahideen resistance during the years 1979 to 1989. The Afghan Mujahideen employed guerrilla tactics in order to fight back against the Soviet invasion. Ambushes were carried out, hit-and-run strategies were utilized, and supply lines belonging to the Soviet Union were targeted. Their efforts, which were supported by international partners, were critical in bringing about the exit of the Soviet Union. Insurgency and counterinsurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan during the 2000s for both countries. On the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, rebel groups such as Al-Qaeda and the Taliban utilized guerrilla tactics against the forces of the United States and its allies. There were ambushes, roadside bombings, and attacks on both military and civilian targets among the strategies that were utilized. These battles brought to light the complications that are inherent in contemporary counterinsurgency operations. Fundamental characteristics of guerrilla warfare: capacity for action and adaptability. Guerrilla fighters employ hit-and-run tactics, which involve making speedy and unexpected attacks and then immediately retreating in order to avoid punishment. Through the use of this strategy, the advantage of larger, more conventional forces can be somewhat mitigated. Ability to adjust. Guerrilla forces are required to be able to quickly adjust to changing conditions and make use of their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. Make use of the terrain. Exploitation of environment. Guerrillas take advantage of natural topographical characteristics, such as forests, mountains, and urban areas, in order to conceal themselves, set up ambushes, and avoid being captured. Tactical advantages. Guerrillas are able to identify suitable places for attacks and efficiently disrupt enemy operations when they have a thorough understanding of the local environment. The use of psychological warfare. Guerrilla tactics target the opposing forces with the intention of instilling psychological stress and anxiety in them, with the end goal of lowering their morale and decreasing their effectiveness. In order to garner support and weaken the legitimacy of the opposing force, guerrilla groups frequently employ propaganda as a means of gaining support. The help of the people. Guerrillas strive to win the hearts and minds of the local community by addressing concerns, providing protection, or supplying social services. This is a common strategy that they employ in their efforts to win support. Integration of the community. Successful guerrilla operations are dependent on strong local support, which supplies resources, intelligence, and logistical support. Implications for the present day: combat in the city. Guerrilla tactics can be used in a variety of complex situations, including modern metropolitan environments, which present both obstacles and opportunity. Although urban locations offer shelter and concealment, they also make logistics more difficult and increase the likelihood of there being collateral damage. Strategies employed by insurgents. Urban guerrillas make use of buildings, tunnels, and densely populated regions to their advantage. They deploy strategies such as car bombings, sniper strikes, and street-level combat. Technology and the battle of guerrilla combat. Tools for communication. The evolution of technology, including social media and encrypted communication, has had a significant impact on the transformation of guerrilla operations. These instruments are utilized by insurgent organizations for the purposes of propaganda, recruiting, and coordination. Drones and surveillance. The dynamics of modern guerrilla warfare have been altered as a result of the utilization of drones and other advanced surveillance technologies by both conventional troops and guerrilla organizations. Over the course of its long and illustrious history, guerrilla warfare has progressed from simple ambushes to complex insurgencies of the present day. Its fundamental concepts, which include mobility, adaptability, psychological impact, and reliance on popular support, continue to be applicable across a variety of eras and battlefield circumstances. A significant insight into the continuous role that guerrilla warfare plays in contemporary military and political confrontations may be gained by gaining an understanding of the historical development of guerrilla warfare, as well as its major characteristics. To watch more details, hit that subscribe button now, like, comment, and share this video. Thanks for watching.